me borrow your shampoo?
What a roommate. Can't you ever buy your own stuff?
Well, Lucy, I'm not exactly dressed to go to the store right now.
How convenient.
Farrah Fawcett's smile helped define 1970s TV, but the final chapter of her life was far quieter than any red carpet, poster, or Charlie's Angels memory. By the time Ryan O'Neal spoke about her last day, their story had already become one of Hollywood's most complicated romances. Glamorous, messy, tender, frustrating, and somehow impossible for either of them to leave fully behind. They met while Farrah was still married to Lee Majors, built a life that never quite became traditional, raised a son, broke each other's hearts, came back together through illness, and nearly married at the very end. Before we start, drop a comment below. Tell us what you remember most about Farrah Fawcett, the famous poster, Charlie's Angels, her later dramatic work, or the heartbreaking way she faced cancer. Today, we're going to talk about what Ryan O'Neal revealed happened the day Farrah Fawcett died. The meeting.
There's such a cute story. Supposedly when you met that you kissed so much that his lips bled.
I think that's an exaggeration.
It's a nice one, though.
Yeah.
Ryan O'Neal and Farrah Fawcett didn't begin like a neat Hollywood romance. Their first meeting came through Lee Majors, Farrah's husband at the time, and one of Ryan's oldest friends. Majors had reconnected with Ryan, brought him around the house, and there was Farrah, already glowing with the kind of warmth people noticed immediately. Ryan later described being struck by her from the start. Farrah was not just beautiful in the obvious Hollywood way. She had a softness, a playfulness, and a natural quality that made her seem different from the usual polished celebrity scene. She could be glamorous, but she did not seem built out of glamour. The strange part is that Majors himself helped open the door. While away for work, he suggested Ryan take Farrah to dinner because she was alone. For most husbands, that would be a terrible idea. In this case, it became the beginning of one of Hollywood's most talked about relationships. Farrah and Ryan's connection moved quickly. There were dinners, concerts, long conversations, and the kind of chemistry that tends to make everyone else in the room uncomfortable. Farrah's marriage to Major was already strained, and Ryan found himself pulled into a situation that was emotional long before it was simple. The spark.
I think life is sweetened by Farrah.
By the early 80s, Farrah and Ryan were a couple, but they were never exactly calm. They were affectionate in public, often kissing for cameras, and looking like a golden pair built for magazine covers. She had the face of the decade, and he had the love story fame that made him one of Hollywood's most recognizable leading men. Behind that glow, they fought. Farrah was strong-willed, and Ryan could be difficult, proud, and impulsive. Their arguments became part of their private rhythm. They loved each other, but they also exhausted each other. That combination made them fascinating from the outside and painful from the inside. In 1985, their son Redmond was born. For Farrah, motherhood mattered deeply. For Ryan, Redmond became part of the bond that tied him and Farrah together, even when the romance was faltering. They never married, but they were not casual partners either. Their lives were knotted together in ways a marriage license could not fully explain. There was even an early attempt at marriage. Ryan once used the gold band from a cigar as an impromptu ring, and they headed toward Reno. Then a flat tire stopped the trip. They laughed it off as a sign, but looking back, that little interruption feels almost too on the nose for their entire relationship. The break.
Embarrassing. I don't know how that happened. For us to find a way back. We haven't quite got it yet. And I never would have imagined, I just adored her, that she'd leave me, that she'd take, she'd be disgusted with me and take off.
The romance finally cracked in a very public and painful way. In 1997, Farrah reportedly walked in on Ryan with another woman. For many couples, that would have been the clean ending. For Farrah and Ryan, nothing was ever that clean. They separated, but they still shared a son, a history, and years of emotional habit. Farrah's life also had its own pressures. She had spent years trying to prove she was more than the poster on the wall and more than Jill Monroe from Charlie's Angels. She took serious roles, made bold career choices, and sometimes faced harsh public judgment. One famous moment came after her appearance on David Letterman in 1997. Viewers mocked her behavior, and rumors spread that she was on drugs. Ryan later said she was trying to play into a silly Playboy bunny persona and was hurt when people laughed at her rather than understanding the act. The split didn't erase the connection. When Ryan was diagnosed with leukemia in 2001, Farrah returned to him as a caregiver. That says a lot. They could wound each other, disappoint each other, and walk away for a while, but when life turned frightening, they still knew where to go. The illness.
I never loved her more than I did during her illness. She just
rose to the occasion. She went too soon. Don't know what happened.
Then the roles reversed. In 2006, Farrah was diagnosed with anal cancer. She went through treatment, was briefly believed to be cancer-free, and then faced the devastating news that the disease had returned and spread. Her battle became public partly because she chose to document it. Farrah's story showed a side of her that many casual fans had never seen. This was not the feathered hair poster girl frozen in 1976. This was a woman facing pain, fear, hospital rooms, invasive treatment, and the loss of privacy. She wanted people to see what cancer really looked like. Ryan stayed close. By then, the wildest years of their relationship had given way to something quieter. He rubbed her head after she lost her famous hair. He watched the woman who had once seemed almost unreal become fragile in front of him. He admitted he did not know how to imagine the world without her. Farrah was still Farrah, though. Friends remembered her as ordinary in the best way at home. She cooked, cleaned, laughed, and lived in a way that was not all that different from anyone else trying to keep a household together. The legend and the woman were always sharing the same space. The last day.
Do you regret that you and Farrah never got married?
Yeah, sure. In fact, I tried to organize it late, and the priest came to marry us, and instead he had to give her the last rites.
Near the end, Ryan asked Farrah to marry him again. This time, there was no flat tire, no joking escape, and no assumption that there would always be another chance. Farrah accepted. After nearly 3 decades of love, fighting, separation, reunion, illness, and unfinished promises, they were finally ready. A priest arrived at St. John's Hospital, but the wedding did not happen. Instead of performing the marriage ceremony, he administered last rites. This is the detail Ryan revealed that made the story feel almost unbearably sad. They had waited so long that the wedding day became a goodbye. Farrah died on June 25, 2009, at age 62. Ryan was at her side. Those closest to her said she was surrounded by love, but her thoughts were also with Redmond, who was struggling with legal troubles and could not be with her in the way she wanted. Even at the end, she was a mother thinking of her son. Ryan later admitted he was not over her death. How could he be? The relationship had been too large, too messy, and too unfinished. He had regrets, and he did not pretend otherwise. But he also said there was never a day he did not love her, which may be the simplest explanation for why neither of them ever really escaped the other. Now it's time to hear from you. Do you think Farrah Fawcett and Ryan O'Neal's relationship was a true Hollywood love story, or was it too troubled to romanticize? Let us know in the comments section below.